Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Austin, and I'm an Associate Director at the Sanger Leadership Center here at the Ross School of Business. I'm really excited to welcome you to I believe this is our fourth Leadership Dialogues. We started the series about a year ago with the goal of bringing in speakers from industry, nonprofits, and the political sphere to pair them together with our U of M faculty to speak about a little thing that we love called leadership. So thank you for being here today, and I have the honor of introducing our two speakers, Kofi Bruce and Gretchen Spreitzer. So I'd love to tell you a little bit more about them before we kick off. Our moderator today is Gretchen Spreitzer, and Dr. Spreitzer is the Associate Dean for Engaged Learning and Professional Development here at the Ross School of Business. She's also the Keith and Valerie Alessi Professor of Business Administration, as well as a Professor of Management and Organizations. Her research focuses on employee empowerment and leadership development, particularly within the context of organizational change and decline. Her most recent work is looking at positive deviance and how organizations enable their employees to thrive. Gretchen is also an employee advisor of the Center for Positive Organizations, as well as a faculty associate here at the Sanger Leadership Center. Joining her today is Kofi Bruce. He is the CFO of General Mills, and he has had that position since 2020. Prior to that, Kofi also was at General Mills since 2009, where he held a variety of positions, such as the Vice President and Treasurer, the Vice President for Finance of Yoplait, and the Vice President and Controller prior to becoming CFO. He also held senior management positions at Ecolab and Ford Motor Company. Kofi earned his bachelor's at Stanford and then is proud to have gotten his master's degree here at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. He's an Aspen Fellow, a board member of LifeWorks, Electronic Arts, and Partners in Food Solutions. As Kofi will tell you, he has not had a linear career path and started out as a liberal arts major before joining business school. I'm looking forward to getting to hear about your journey more today. And thank you again for both Gretchen and Kofi joining us. Thank you. Round of applause.
Well, great to see all of you on this beautiful April day. It's great to see so many familiar faces out in the audience. And Kofi, we are so excited that you're here. As a fellow alum, welcome back to Ross.
What a thrill.
It's great to have you back. And for all of you, we're going to spend maybe 40, 45 minutes with some questions that Kofi and I have curated together on topics that build on things that you asked about for today. But we will leave some time toward the end for your questions so you can be thinking about those as the two of us are having a conversation here. So Kofi, as Michelle introduced you, she talked about your undergraduate degree in the liberal arts. And I know you also have an interesting background in sports as part of your college experience. And we're interested in understanding how those help prepare you for being an effective business leader. How do those things matter for you in your development as a leader?
Yeah, so I was, full disclosure, a liberal arts undergrad in international relations. And you know, as I think back on sort of my career, I'm absolutely not doing what I thought I would be doing when I was 18, and going into college. So, you know, I think I'm probably the poster child for being open to career opportunities that may not necessarily seem like they are quote unquote on the path, and following a level of curiosity. You know, some of that, and you referenced my collegiate sport career. I walked onto the fencing team at Stanford, so I'm actually a varsity athlete. No one's as surprised as me. And as I think about, like, part of what motivates me is just I'm a big believer in learning. Lifelong learning and following curiosity. So as I think about what set me on the path that I'm now kind of sitting here in this finance job at a big company was really the combination of my interest in the world, so my international relations interest, my curiosity about things maybe I didn't fully understand, and the fact that I needed something to do for a year while I was waiting for the Peace Corps to figure out where to send me. And that's what started this kind of whole ball rolling here. So as I was talking in preparation for this, I used the term that I'm a bit of an accidental tourist in business. I didn't set out. I didn't grow up in a house where, frankly, this was even encouraged, right? I mean, my dad's a psychologist, my mom's a social worker, my brother's a teacher. And, I think I was raised in a household where this wasn't even sort of in the set of possibilities. So, I mean, arguably, maybe I'm the black sheep in my family now as an unrepentant capitalist. But, I set on this path a bit by accident because I talked to the Peace Corps. I went through Peace Corps interviews after undergrad, and they said, go find something to do for a year. And I was like, well, I got to pay my bills for a year. So I took a job in mortgage banking, and I found that there were skills that I could apply, in particular around softer skills, around leadership, communication, and influence, things that I thought would be useful in international relations, and probably are, but I don't know. I don't do it for a living. And those things were fully transportable in a business context. Problem was I didn't really know anything about, I didn't have any hard technical business skills, which is ultimately why after 3 years I ended up on a path that got me to the University of Michigan for business school. Was I needed to add some technical skills to my suite of tools so that I could be a capable and competent business leader. But the transition along the way was I applied to graduate school after I passed on the Peace Corps when they came knocking, and then I applied to graduate school to go get a master's at American and then hopefully a PhD, and then passed on that fellowship when the time came, and then ultimately applied to business school. Part of what attracted me to Michigan was the size and contingent of international students and the global programs at the William Davidson Institute. I don't know if it's even still here, I haven't checked. But those were the things that drew me here, in addition to coming here to pick up those technical skills so that I could advance my career.
So I really like that term, accidental tourist. My hunch is if you talk to many of the people that you admire in fields you're interested in, that many of them have been accidental tourists too. It's kind of figuring out how you take advantage of those accidental opportunities as they come up. So Kofi, you talked a little bit about how you got to making that decision to go for the MBA. The next question folks are interested in hearing about is, if you look at your LinkedIn profile, it looks like a pretty linear upward pathway after you graduated from business school in the finance field. And folks are interested in understanding at what point or role did you realize that you needed to add something new to your skill set in order to make the jump to the next role in your journey as an accidental tourist?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I always get a chuckle out of that because part of the reason maybe that it looks that way is because of the skills we learn in business school, right? where they teach us how to interview, and part of what you do in interview is show building competence over time, right? You have to provide examples as you answer the interview questions. And so you can tell any story that way, right? And I could certainly tell my story that way, and that it might be true. It didn't feel like that, honestly, along the way. And in fact, I'll tell you a specific story. I had a career that started in Ford's Treasury Development Program. If he had been here, Dave Webb, who's an advisor on the Sanger Institute, would have introduced me. He was also in that program. And it was meant and geared to develop you into a future treasury leader. And along the way, teach a bunch of skills about debt capital markets, about the balance sheet and cash flow, and make you into an excellent treasurer. And I went into that program like any good type A driven, ambitious former student, and I was like focused on what do I need to do to get to the end of this thing and sort of graduate. Up is the only direction to move. And I remember there was a seminal moment where I went in with a cohort of peers who we all came in the same class year. And every single one of them got promoted on the same day except me. They all got promoted to manager, so they graduated before I did. And I about lost my damn mind. And I remember two things happened. One, 2 months later, I got the job that I absolutely wanted, which was to go into the M&A group. And they were just waiting for the organizational opening to open up so that they could go into that job. So I'm glad that they made me wait. But one of my mentors actually pulled me aside and said, "You should not have accepted promotion." Which I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. When do you not accept promotion, right? And this mentor said, you have the potential to be a chief financial officer. Right now, you just accepted a job that will specialize you and make you into think about it like a certified master electrician. He said, but CFO is a general contractor. General contractor needs to work in the core of the finance function, which is in the business, which at Ford was product development. And he said, you had no experience there now. And you're now a manager. He's like, you skipped a couple years of analyst jobs, a couple years of senior analyst jobs. You got no experience. So the next job requires a whole bunch of skills you've had no exposure to. So is the person that's making a decision to put you in that job going to be excited about putting a master electrician who's practicing to be a general contractor in that job? Or are they going to bet on somebody who's already put some time in on general contracting? Which I thought was the first sort of real lesson. As I think about from that point forward, I started to view my career development as not vertical, but horizontal. And I had to think about what skills do I need ultimately when I maybe get to the place here, and what are the experiences I'm developing along the way that'll actually not only prepare me but also be compelling to somebody who has to make a decision to put me into a job like this. And that was a very different exercise, because what it meant was I had to watch for a while my peers who came in that treasury cohort with me move up, not only at Ford but at other companies as they spawned off and left elsewhere within treasury. And that was also still available to me, but it wasn't the only thing I wanted to do. So you have to be comfortable kind of setting your own path, and that was kind of the first lesson. And second, you have to be comfortable thinking about what you need and not just getting ahead based on what's immediately in front of you.
We talked a lot about in our Center for Positive Organizations and Sanger in terms of finding your own pathway and not just copying others. And I think the story you told about that mentor putting in your mind that position of CFO, just important to help people aspire to, what ultimately they will get promoted to. Recently, you've added into your kind of portfolio being on a board of Electronic Arts. Can you talk about how you made that decision to at a board? Because I'm guessing the CFO job doesn't give you a lot of slack time. So can you share a little bit about how you made that decision?
Well, you're right. There's not tons of free time. That said, being on a public company board in particular for somebody who's a public company CFO was actually helpful to my day job. So I'll give you an example. But as I approached the decision, first I had to get through the first year of my job as CFO. So that was kind of the first condition that was my boss and I had set. But the second was really around, I wanted to pick something that was going to be additive to, in terms of exposure to my day job. And as I think about where we are in our strategy at General Mills, one of the things we are doing is digital adoption and integration of digital and tech into everything from our functional execution to our marketing and our supply chain and our growth ultimately, and our ability to market and sell more effectively and to penetrate our consumer lives and their experience, and offer them meaningful interaction in ways that we today can't, right? Everything's kind of all mass media, right? And the companies out there that are doing this well can market specifically to you and talk to you in ways that are meaningful and useful to you, and ultimately design products that are useful and meaningful to you. And as we think about the core of my business is about finding those things and anticipating consumer needs. So as I think about taking on a board role and why electronic arts, you're like, well, that's gaming. How is that related to food? That's a business that in the past less than 7 years went from being probably 20% sold online to, now it's kind of flipped where it's 20% stores and 80%, 90% online. Very few people are buying those discs. So they were essentially a manufacturing company that's now essentially an online media and entertainment company, and most of their revenue is driven through the experience, the digital experience and environment that they build for their employees. So it's directly transportable to my day job and how we execute a strategy. And then second, there's a big part of my job at General Mills is interacting with our board and our board of directors. That's one of the key constituents that I manage, along with our investors and talking to employees. The board is probably one of the most influential and important set of constituents that I have to work with on a regular basis. So putting me on the other side of the table is also meaningful and useful. It has changed the way in which I shape messages, communicate, clarify information for the board, because when you're on the recipient side and you're in somebody's business for a couple hours or a day and a half, once every 3 months, you grow an appreciation for how little how much context you need to give people for them to be effective on important business questions. So those are the things that I've learned.
All right, so this side hustle is actually helping you do your day job.
Very much so.
Yeah,
very much so.
So we've talked a little bit about your career trajectory. You may have some more questions, so keep those in mind for the open Q&A part of our time together. But I want to shift gears a little bit to talk a little bit about how you seek to make an impact in the world. So there's a lot of talk today about how people at the top of organizations can affect positive change. How can leaders be advocates for inclusive and high-performing cultures, especially given the trying times we're part of today? In your business, high inflation is a big one, supply chain disruption, racial violence, inequity, the global health crises that have been in on our radar screen the last few years. Can you talk a little bit about how you, as an important leader at General Mills, have these as part of your agenda in addition to all the kind of normal stuff of being a CFO?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I don't know that they're maybe as distinguishable. I think one of the things I am, in addition to the financial leader for the organization, is I'm an enterprise leader, along with all of my peers at the executive leadership level, and I'm responsible for the health, wellness, and maintenance of the culture of the organization. I view that as a core part of my job. I think the challenge in this environment has been there's been a crush of so many things on employees kind of all at once. First, it was the abject fear in the early days of the pandemic. As everybody was kind of in lockdown, am I going to get this? What does this mean? And can I stay safe? And do I have the tools I need to do my job? At every step along the way, one of my jobs as leader was to make sure that we understood what the challenges were for our employees. Early days, it was around their personal health and safety. By the time we got to June, it was around the anxiety that came from social unrest following the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Right? And then later it was violence and racial hatred towards Asians and rising anti-Semitism. And then now it's been inflation and challenges on household budgets and mental health and burnout and fatigue. Those things are all part of the job of making sure that you can allow employees and create the conditions for employees to show up and give the best measure of their talents with the highest level of engagement possible. And that's, as a leader, one of my jobs was sometimes, as I'm talking in the organization, to make sure I understood maybe some of the quiet fears that needed acknowledgement, right? The things that I say and don't say have a huge impact. It's not enough for me to just get up and say we had an excellent year. But to tell people a story about how heroic their efforts were, where maybe we fell short of our own expectations, where maybe there are points of pride that we should highlight, those things are also important to be part of the conversation. Right? So I think for me as a leader, that's what I viewed as one of my jobs, is not just to report the financial performance of the company and talk to the employees about that one, but to help them understand that I, along with my peers, understood what they were processing, and that we were, where we can, doing the things necessary to help them be as effective as possible. And that meant sometimes helping them do the things that weren't necessarily directly work-related, whether it's dealing with, their own trauma from seeing, on live TV the killing of George Floyd, or whether it's the challenge of I'm burnt out because I got to do my job. I start at 7 a.m. and I'm expected to be on calls at 7 a.m. and I gotta make breakfast for my kids, and they're also home, and you know what? I don't have any time for myself, right? So a lot of times, something as simple as creating the permission structure by saying, take time out of your day, schedule time to get out of and protect it, right? Those things have a lot of weight when they come from the right place. So those are the kinds of things that I found I've had to be very intentional about as a leader in this time period.
When we were talking just before this, next door, you said something very interesting. You said finance is really important for shaping the organizational culture. Mm-hmm. Can you say a little bit more? You were, I think, implicitly suggesting that just now, but can you share a little bit what you?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, my job could be just to tell a story to just say, look, here's the financial performance of the company. Here's the report card on our performance. We we grew 7% in sales, and we grew our earnings per share 9%, and relative to our peer group, this was X, right? And I can do that, but I don't think that's sufficient, because one of the things that I reflect on is I have a job as a storyteller in the organization. I might speak a particular language. My language is probably the language of financial performance, but it is not the only thing that I can deliver in my message. And part of the way you can help build culture is to think about framing success and providing clarity in times of uncertainty, right? So that's been a big part of my job as an environment. We're in an environment where, early in the pandemic, we didn't know, we were seeing growth like 100% on some of our businesses, 100% year on year. A packaged food company that's 150 years old, that is, it's unheard of, right? But that was a function of how unprecedented this time was. And people want to know what's going to happen. And I can't give them certainty, but I can give them clarity. Well, these are the assumptions. This is what we think is going to happen, but I can't guarantee that. And here's how we're thinking about it, and here's how we'll manage through it, right? I see that as a big part of how we can help build culture from my position.
Seems like a good ad for the storytelling lab, story lab. So Kofi, I think a question that a number of people shared with Sanger that they were interested in hearing you talk about is how diverse executives, especially Black executives, may feel they have a extra moral responsibility, and maybe even a burden to help solve the racial wealth gap. How have you experienced that? Have you experienced that burden? How does that play out in your work life?
Sure. Well, I think it's hard not to feel like that's a responsibility, because I think other people have opened doors for you as a Black executive, as a person of color. So it's part of what goes with the set of expectations. I think it's harder in an organization if you're in an organization where you're the only one, or where you have maybe a culture that isn't as sensitized to it. One of the reasons I have stayed at General Mills as long as I have is it's an organization that had already been on a journey for decades of building a diverse organization, understood and hardwired in the value of diversity. I'll give you an example. We sponsored one of the first civic Martin Luther King Day commemoration breakfasts. And it's still going on today, some almost 30 years later, right? It wasn't long after that became a national holiday. And we do that with the UNCF. We also had, at around that same time, started one of the first employee affinity groups, our Black Champions Network, followed by our Latino and LGBTQ, our women leadership organizations. And those are all part of the wiring of the culture. So it's not a place where I've had to spend a lot of time convincing people of the value of diversity. That said, I also have had peers, Black peers on the executive leadership team at a time when these challenges are going on. And there have been times where, that makes it easier to carry that burden. But the thing that's important is, even with that, you need the person in the big seat, willing, open, and capable to be sometimes influenced, and sometimes influenced by cold hard truth, easier when they don't need it. And in my case, I think if I'm honest, I've been blessed to have a boss who, by the time I had talked to him after seeing the George Floyd video, he was already working on a draft of a statement. I didn't have to tell him to do that. And I can't tell you what a relief that was in terms of, because I already had anxiety going. I'm like, okay, we're going to have to, maybe I'm going to have to push. I didn't have to push. I actually just got to jump right in and help, give input on the statement. But I know every organization isn't like that. And that burden doesn't go away, whether it's easy or hard. And there may be a time where I do need to push harder. But I will tell you, it's not one that I can imagine, even if it's tiresome, turning my back on. And it isn't fair. But it's real and it's there.
So thinking toward the future, we have future generation of leaders out here in the audience. What would be some words of wisdom or advice that you would offer to them about developing themselves as leaders, whether here on campus, in their first job? What would you recommend?
Well, I remember at this stage in my career development thinking like everything just happened on this very, very linear path, and you do X and then you do Y. And there are a lot of people around you who, when you're in business school, they tell you got to have this class or that class. And if you don't have that, you're not going to get X job. And then later when you're at a company, it'll be your peers in your cohort who will tell you, if you don't get that job, then your career is over. Or if you don't go into, maybe in school, it's if you don't go into consulting or PE or whatever it is your year, that is the it trade, then you're probably not doing something right. And I can tell you, I was not self-possessed enough early in business school to know exactly what I wanted. But I started to figure out what I didn't want. And one of the things I would encourage everybody to think a lot about is culture. Culture of the type of work you're going to be doing, right? I mean, it's not going to be a surprise. There's a certain culture that goes with certain types of jobs. And you're either wired for it or you're not, right? I mean, if you're wired by the things that make, say, PE go, great. There's a trade in terms of work-life balance and other things, and if those things are important to you, maybe don't shoehorn yourself into that box, right? There are other paths. Part of the reason I chose Ford was because when they came to talk to me, they like, we see that you like to do capital market stuff, and maybe you'd want to go into banking, but I didn't really want sort of the other things that went with investment banking. But what they offered was the opportunity to get to do a lot of those things that intellectually I found stimulating without signing up for the other things. And it's okay for you to carve your own path, but it has to start with a level of self-awareness about what motivates you to get up in the morning. The value of this point of your career is that you can make a mistake or two in terms of what you pick, and it's not career fatal. So if you think you want to go do consulting, go try it. And if it sucks, go do something else. And I'm not picking on consulting. I just picked that as an example, so don't want to offend anybody here if you're thinking about consulting. But my point here is, it is comfortable to be confident in the things that motivate you, even if it means that you're not necessarily running with the herd. And however you want to define the herd, but I know in business school there is a herd, because I felt that pull too.
Culture, self-awareness, not running with the herd. It's interesting, this morning in my senior capstone class, we are in the stage of the class with presentations, and one of the presentations was about what to do if your dream job isn't so dreamy. And one of the statistics that group shared is that over 60% of people have some job in their career that they're in under 2 years. So the majority of people today, not necessarily their first job that they're in a short time, but they move. And part of that, I think, is very consistent with what you're saying, is you don't have to feel stuck. We also talk about job crafting. So maybe you don't have to move, but maybe there's ways you can craft to make some changes in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, you talked about that a little bit in your book on positive leadership.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, you're right. Good job doing your homework. I like that. All right, we are almost open to your questions, so I hope you've been thinking about them, but we're gonna end my time with Kofi with a lightning round. I have 3 quick questions for you, Kofi. These are things you can answer in under 30 seconds each, but I'm gonna add a 4th, and that is, where did you get those cool maize and blue shoes? I don't know, can you see those? Feel free to stand up. They're pretty cool. Where are they from?
Nike Club.
Nike Club, all right.
I have become a bit of a, since we are no longer all that formal, I've stopped wearing dress shoes wherever I can. So I had to put them on this past week, and I decided I'm done. So I have collected already a lot of sneakers, which I'm pretty certain my mother-in-law is reporting back to my wife about the size of the collection. But
I hear there's a cool movie coming out about Air
yes,
by around the Nike story. So very cool. All right, here are the 3 that I asked you about ahead of time. So what is your favorite place to eat in, what is or was your favorite place to eat in Ann Arbor?
same, Zingerman's.
Zingerman's, all right. All right, so how many of you have been there? Deli, all right. If you haven't been there yet.
I used to sneak into corporate presentations that were serving Zingerman's, even if I wasn't interested in, whatever the heck their particular job was, just so I could eat Zingerman's.
Talk about culture. Zingerman's is a place with culture.
Yes.
So, yeah. All right, your best memory from your time at Ross that's shareable in this community.
Come on. I think for me, it was probably the summer internship I spent under what was then the Africa Business Development Corps and William Davidson Institute. And they sent me to South Africa, 1997, and I did venture capital and merchant banking in the newly kind of free South Africa. So it would have been like three years into Mandela's first term. And it was amazing. It was absolutely, from a business standpoint, it was interesting, but the entire experience with a small group of other MBA students was just phenomenal and life-changing.
Was that through the William Davidson Institute? Sounds amazing. All right. Who was your favorite professor, or what was your favorite class?
Well, it's funny. The one that really, I had a lot of good professors, just shameless plug. But the one that really stuck out was Anil Karnani's Intro to Strategy. Have other people had him? Yes? Yes, right. Okay, there's a few. All right.
I think he now teaches an elective rather than the core.
Well, he was my intro to strategy, and he was a tough teacher, but it was absolutely phenomenal.
Okay, so the finance guy, it wasn't a finance class.
No,
how about
no,
that?
I mean they were fine.
All right, now it's your turn. So we do have some mics that will be coming around so that people can see. Nick, there is a hand right up here in the front.
Hi, thank you so much. Really appreciated everything you've shared. My name's Isabel. I'm an MBA 1, and I'm curious. I know that General Mills has made a number of commitments related to its sustainability of its supply chain and regenerative agriculture, et cetera. And I'm curious, from within the divisions that you oversee related to corporate finance and financial planning, et cetera, how you all came to the decision to invest in supply chain sustainability, like regenerative agriculture, et cetera, if climate risk was something that was driving that and something that you all had modeled out, or if it is more something that was more demand-driven that you were getting from your consumers, et cetera? Thank you.
Good question. Well, it's a little bit of both. Well, we certainly see and increasingly are being asked to talk about the risks of climate change, right? And, you know, there's some SEC rules and as well as some potentially European rules around disclosure that might require us to talk a little bit more extensively and even try to quantify at some level the extent of exposure. Part of what has driven us is just a belief that if we pick areas that we influence and drive because we are a major user of agricultural commodities, and agricultural commodities can and do have a large impact on greenhouse gas and greenhouse gas emissions. Through a big part of that comes from more traditional farming methods where you till the soil and then overtreat it with chemicals and fertilizers. And so regenerative ag and regenerative agriculture and our commitment to building 3 million acres of product that are regeneratively agged came from that. And that the belief that a more sustainable and research into more sustainable ways of farming would ultimately lead to better retention of topsoil, which would then ultimately lead to better retention of water and carbon sequestration, right? So as plants die and carbon gets released, every time you till up the soil, it releases the carbon in the soil. If you follow regenerative agriculture, it's basically a practice where you start to grow biodiversity of crops, healthy root structures. That leads to better water retention and carbon sequestration. So that's a big part of it. And we can influence that because we are upstream and buy agricultural inputs. So we try to pick areas where we have a credible path to make an impact. You know, I think broadly, consumers care about it on some of our products. We own Annie's, which is a large organic brand. And consumers of Annie's care about it. I would argue probably consumers, the core consumers of, say, some of our Betty Crocker cake mixes, probably less so, right? So there are spaces where this has a consumer value, and where it does, we will talk to it.
Hi, thanks for being here. My name's Caroline, and I'm an MBA too. And it seems like you had a really great mentor early in your career that helped you visualize your potential career path. Being CFO is a big thing to put out, though, to say that this is a goal that I have in my career. At what point did you start to really visualize that for yourself and start to share that as a vision and a goal with other people?
It's a good question. I think it probably, I had people who believed it was possible for me long before I was really comfortable with the idea that I could do it, or that it was possible for me. He was one. There were a few others, actually, who were managers of mine early in my career who started to kind of nudge me in that direction. When I left Ford, I left really kind of more with a view of, one, I had a major life change. So I just had 2 kids, and I was working ridiculous investment banker-like hours, but not getting paid like that. So my wife's like, you don't need to do this, right? This is a high elective. You're miserable and you're underpaid. She said, you can be miserable and get paid like an investment banker, so go do that instead, or pick a different company. So that's kind of what was the primary driver. The secondary was that it gave me an opportunity for advancement into an assistant treasurer role, which, you know, it was a pretty big deal. I wasn't ready by any means on paper for it, but they were willing to take me for it. And I didn't necessarily know, like, hey, this is going to set me on a path to CFO. It was more like, hey, maybe I can become a corporate officer out of this. And I didn't really start thinking about it actively until I was a couple years into my time at Ecolab, where I was like, I really think I can go for this, and I want to do that. And then I started thinking about, am I going to get the right set of experiences here to be able to do that, which is ultimately part of the reason why I left Ecolab to go to General Mills.
Hi, thanks Kofi for being here. I'm an MBA 3 slash I also graduated in December, so I'm just tacking on to these.
I was going to say, what's an MBA 3?
Well, I'm part of the dual degree with the School of Environment and Sustainability, so I appreciate the question from my friend over there, Isabel, about regenerative ag. I wanted to dig a little bit more on that, if we can. General Mills is very much a leader in this and has been so for years now. As CFO, it seems to me one of the levers that you could pull is thinking about natural capital and valuating that. And you talked about like soil health and water quality. Mm-hmm. Do you put a number on those in your financial evaluations at all? Or is it just environmental, like it's great to have, put it on the packaging sort of effort right now?
Yes, and I'll tell you, it's still a work in progress. But what we've done is we have an entire group that is dedicated to executing our broad umbrella or environmental sustainability goals. They're called the Global Impact Governance, Global Impact Team, and there is actually a group of senior executives. I'm on the steering committee, the governance committee, comprised of our CEO, our head of our largest business unit, our head of R&D, our chief HR officer, our chief legal officer, and a few others. And our job is to charter the company's commitments, meaning make them on behalf of the company, and then make sure that they get executed. And one of the jobs I have to do is make sure they get resourced appropriately, that we measure outcomes. So we actually have a finance leader, couple finance people actually supporting that global impact team, whose job it is to actually make sure that we are setting glide paths, meaning, every year we have a glide path to get to, our package recyclability goal of 100% recyclable package by 2030. They have to measure our progress and our spending required to get there, and our ability to get there both on time and on budget, right? Because these things cost money. They all cost money at some level. And that process needs finance people, because anytime you start spending money, there's got to be some controls on it. And so we're actually building the muscle to measure the outcomes outside of our four walls, or at least have a method to do so. And we're working, some cases we're building those ourselves, some cases we're working with third parties that measure these things, because there's some rigor required, and we can't send people out to fields that aren't trained to go measure water retention and things like that. But we have ways that we're trying to get at it for each one of our commitments, and that is part of the new job of finance as we kind of enter this world.
Hi, my name is Annika Gupta. I'm an incoming R&D intern for General Mills in the summer. Super excited. But you talked a little bit about mental health, and I think especially in this day and age where we go to work 9 to 5, and then we can also come home and on our phones continue work. So I guess as a CFO, how do you clear your mind, and how do you kind of wake up energized for the day and keep going?
It's a great question. I didn't do a good job of it, honestly, for the first 6 months. I was talking to Joel over lunch, and one of the things I talked about was, I started in February of 2020. We went into lockdown third week of March of 2020. That was also the same week that I had my first investors earnings call for our third quarter earnings release. So we're on a funky fiscal calendar that runs June through May. So that happened to be our third quarter. And we had about 2 months left of our fourth quarter, give or take. And so I just kind of went into working at home like I would work in the office initially, and I was up at 7 in the morning and on screen, and getting off screen at 7, and then maybe doing some more emails after dinner, not working out, eating whatever the hell I want because I was home, right? And I got to about July, early August, and like my pants didn't fit. Like I put on regular pants, you know, with a belt and everything, and they didn't fit. None of them. And, you know, I was like, this is not sustainable. And part of it was just, I think like everybody, I went into it, we're going to lockdown for a couple weeks and we'll be back in the office, right? This is temporary. And then all of a sudden, it kind of crept up on you. You're like, well, this has been a long, short-term thing here. And I was like, okay, I got to prepare and go into this more like it's an open-ended, I don't know when I'm going to be back in the office. And when I do get back to the office, I'm going to have to wear pants. One of the rules. So as I think for, you know, from that point forward, I made a commitment. I'm going to do something every day, something active every day. I bought myself some really nice home gym equipment. I bought, I don't know, some of those digital weight systems. I already had a Peloton, and I used that stuff. Like, I removed all the excuses and the barriers. And I probably lost 25 pounds, something like that, over 6 months, and got back into shape. And I've stayed on it. Like, you know, other than when I have to travel, where it's a little bit harder to fit it in, but even then I'll try to get something in. I try to get some activity in every day, usually 2, and on good days, really, I get 3. So it'll be some combination of, I'll do something with weights, I'll do some cardio, usually two cardio-related things. Either, you know, worst case is a walk, best case I get either time on the bike and the treadmill with that. And that actually is probably also one of my biggest mental health commitments, because I find when I start my day with that, and I get up at 5 every day, that's the first thing I do, it sets my mind clear because I can't focus on anything else. I don't read email or anything before I do that. That's become like just part of my schedule. And that habit has probably been the one thing that has kept me sane.
And important for you to model that for your people too.
Sure.
They should prioritize that as
Yeah,
well.
and I do talk about it at work. So.
Yeah. All right, we have time for one final question. Do we have a last question?
Who's it
Maybe a
gonna be?
lightning question right there in the back. All right.
We got an intrepid soul back there. Y'all are going to be mad when she gets a huge gift.
I thought someone was going to ask. I'm CC Nash Alumni Engagement. Thanks for being here. Where does General Mills see themselves when it comes to digital currency, for instance, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin? Has that been something you guys have been considering or adding to your ledger?
Yeah, we have not taken it on as an asset investment in our pension, or nor have we directly looked at using it for any of our cash reserves. Largely, I'm going to say something here that might get me in trouble if there are any crypto traders, but I think there are a couple things I'm concerned about. One is there is almost zero regulatory oversight right now. So one of my jobs as a protector is as a protector of assets, of company assets. So I just don't feel like I can defend that as a prudent use of company assets, and I certainly would have a harder time doing so in light of what has happened recently with some of the big crypto firms. That said, there's a lot of promise there. Blockchain technology in terms of, and I'm going to say something now that I'm going to probably anger some bankers, so I'm going to go ahead and say it. There is no reason why there should be any float on money transfers. In our modern monetary system, I should be able to instantaneously transfer money from point A to point B. You know, and it should be almost frictionless. Blockchain offers a path to do that. And I don't think it needs to sit outside of the current monetary system. It can actually be sit in it. It doesn't need to, but I mean, it can. So I think with a little bit more regulation and some more development, time in development, I think there's something there. One person's opinion. That's not an endorsement, either for or against. So just, you asked my opinion.
All right, we're going to quote you on that.
Yeah.
Back to all our finance
That's right. I'm going to be
professors.
made news, right? You get in trouble.
Thank you for all of your questions, and Kofi, thank you for all of your sharing
to be
your
back.
wisdom with us.
Thank you, Kofi, and thank you, Gretchen, on behalf of the center. We really appreciate you being here today, and we appreciate all of you as well. Before I let you go and join the reception, I wanted to briefly let you know a little bit more about our center. As Kofi and Gretchen touched on, our center is about leadership development in all areas, including storytelling. So if you haven't heard of the Story Lab, that's something I'd highly encourage you to get involved with. But our center is here at Ross and at Michigan to invite students in for leadership workshops, for events like these with alumni and community members. And we hope that we can engage with you more next year. As you know, our semester's winding down. I heard lots of people are graduating in this room, so congratulations to you. But I hope that we can have an opportunity to be a part of your journey as you're here at Ross or here at Michigan. So thank you once again to our speakers and to our audience, and I hope you guys can all join us for a reception outside. Thank you.